Meeting to order. Good morning. This is the Utah Lake Commission meeting, March 18th of the year 2021. We welcome everybody here. And we have an agenda that has been posted and we will follow the agenda as outlined. Item number 2 is action items. Approve governing board minutes from December 10th, 2020 and the work session minutes from January 21st of 2021. Has everybody had a chance to review those minutes? And if such, is there any changes that have been added to the minutes that you're aware of, Sam?
There's no major changes on anything after my minutes.
All right, I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Okay. And I'll ask everybody as you make a motion or second if you'd state your name. I can state.
Jeff Lamson.
Okay. I have a motion by Jeff.
Second, Lon Lot.
Second by Lon Lot from Alpine. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Move on to action item number 2B, review monthly budget report from December 2020 to January 2021. And I'm going to have Eric, if you wouldn't mind reviewing that.
Hey, and I apologize for not having February there. It's always kind of pushing it to the last minute to try to have all these documents out, you know, in plenty of time in advance. So I have a February too, but I'll skip that until our next meeting. Really of note, we just have on our December, we finished up our Sunrise Engineering contract. You'll see on the second page of that document. That was for our shoreline soils assessment. In our January meeting, you'll notice one of our larger expenses was for the algae treatment. This was the second half of the Alpine Technical Services algae treatment that took place in the Linden Marina, and that finished up that contract. So if you go to the back page of January, we are finished both with all of last year's or this year's algae treatments and our soils assessment. The algae treatments, that was 133,362 that was billed. That is all pass-through dollars from I don't know if it was considered a grant, but that was a state appropriation from the year prior that came through Forestry, Fire, and State Lands. And so as invoices came to the commission, we just handed those to Forestry, Fire, and State Lands and got a check for those and then reimbursed, or we were reimbursed for that. So those contracts, those two are completed. Otherwise, everything is on budget and moving ahead smoothly.
All right. Are there any questions from the commission? Okay, thank you, Eric. We'll now move on to item number 3, open and public meetings training. If this goes over an hour, we might get that hour of sleep back, but no, I'm joking. We've all been through this, but I am not sure who is online that is going to teach us, remind us. UAS.
It's LeGrand. I think he's having trouble. Give me just 1 second.
Those in other capacities, we get this about, well, if you're on another board, I don't know, we get it 4 or 5 times a year, but hey, it's a great reminder. And we can come back to that, Sam, if we need to.
Mayor Frost, he's just joining right now. 1 second.
We've got a great turnout today. Thanks so much, everyone, for being on.
Yeah, we do.
We might have nearly the whole commission board on today. Oh, there he is.
Hey, LeGrand, you are muted,
Good.
but we'll give you some time to train us.
Awesome. Well, let me see if I can apologize. We didn't have that. Hold on, let me see if I can bring up my screen here. How's everyone doing this early morning? Sounds like we're enthusiastic and happy.
We were commenting that it feels like an hour earlier still.
Yeah, yes, it does, doesn't it? Let's see. I'm gonna have to pull this over just one moment.
LeGrand, just for the record, if you might just state your name and the agency you're from.
Oh, good. Yes, LeGrand Bitter. I represent the Utah Association of Special Districts. And it's great to be with you. Obviously a little easier if we're all in the same room, but unique circumstances, isn't it? Okay, I'm just seeing if I can share my screen now. Can you see that? I don't know if you can see the presentation or not.
Not yet.
Not yet, LeGrand. You should have, there you go.
There we go.
Perfect.
Okay, is that showing up okay?
Looks
Yes,
great.
sir.
Okay, good. All right, we'll dive right into it. I understand we have about 10, 15 minutes max, and so that's just perfect. We'll move at high speed. Normally, I'd like to just have you ask questions on the fly. If you have any items come up, most of you, I think, are very familiar with these types of things, or a few changes in the law this session, but I'll move through, and if you have questions, please interrupt. We'll cover these items in the next few minutes: train requirements, statutory requirements, open meetings, emergency meetings, and so forth, agendas. Now, the Utah Lake Commission, is it correct to say that that is an interlocal agency?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. All right. With respect to districts, and the same thing applies to all political subdivisions in the state of Utah, the presiding officer of the public body is to ensure that members of the public body are provided with training each year on the requirements of the Open and Public Meetings Law, and certainly this fulfills that requirement. Certainly there are requirements for records officers to be trained every year. You're familiar with that. They can get that through the State Archives website. Open meetings. The question is, what is an open meeting? And the real defining criteria is, under the statute, whether or not a quorum is present. So that includes workshops or executive sessions. This came from some legislation that was passed about 15 years ago, in a bill run by Representative Donaldson. There was a situation in northern Utah where a district was holding a meeting and the press was not invited, or the public. They wanted to be. They were discussing some important issues that were of importance to the public and the press. And as was customary at the time, workshops and executive sessions were not considered public meetings. And so they said no. So what happened? The press and the public called called their legislator and said that this is what is happening. He said, I'll run a bill and fix it. So this is a story that occurs every single year. So he ran a bill and fixed it. So in a nutshell, again, if there's a quorum present, the meeting is subject to the Open and Public Meetings Act, regardless of what it is called, whether it's a workshop or an executive session. That does not include chance meetings or social settings. Executive session, brief explanation there. It's been customary over the decades for political subdivisions to refer to an open meeting, to a closed meeting, I should say, as an executive session. Executive session here is meaning the executives of the board. So a meeting of the executive committee, the chair, vice chair, and secretary, for example. So as long as you make that distinction, I normally suggest that entities not refer to a closed meeting as an executive session, but refer to it as a closed meeting so that confusion doesn't exist.
Grant, could I ask, as you're going through this, if there's anything that you might highlight to tell us what has changed from what we currently know and maybe any changes that were made this year?
Yes.
We kind of picked
Yes.
it apart a little bit.
That's good. Yes, thank you. There are a couple of items here. We will do that. So as you know, electronic meetings are subject to the Open and Public Meetings Act. And a political subdivision can hold a public meeting if they've adopted a policy. Although this is one item that has changed this year. There was a bill run, you can see it on the screen there, Senate Bill 125 that passed. This bill will be effective, as will most, on May 5th coming up. So this is not current law, but it will be on May 5th. An electronic meeting policy has been adopted by the board. Obviously, so if you've adopted a policy, the point of this little caveat here is if you've adopted electronic meetings policy, which I'm sure you have, you're going to want to look at Senate Bill 125 and make certain that you adjust your policy to incorporate the changes that are found in the bill. We do have a template on our website that is available for that purpose. And this slide kind of incorporates the next couple of slides, some of the changes that are found in that bill. This bill is a follow-up from a bill that was run last July in the 5th special session of the legislature to replace the executive orders by Governor Herbert that kind of set aside the open meetings law in large degree. So this bill clarifies a few things and essentially says an anchor location is required unless there's a finding by the chair that there are health issues and safety issues. Read it at the meeting. The body provides a means by which members of the public may attend the meeting electronically. And an anchor location is required unless the chair makes these determinations. So here are those determinations. It provides a substantial health risk at the anchor location, and the normal anchor location is ordered closed for public health or safety reasons. So that's kind of a brief overview. In the meeting notice, it needs to describe the chair's determination for that fact summary and provides a means by which the public may attend remotely. There is a provision in the bill as well that is kind of allows for kind of an on-the-fly determination by the chair that it is not safe and move to an electronic meeting completely. The adjustments in this bill are intended to deal with a variety of situations, not just this pandemic, but for example, the big earthquake or something of that sort. So the bottom line is it'd be suggested you review through your policy and make sure it's in harmony with the bill as of May 5th. Electronic communications in public meetings. So what is an electronic message? This was in Senator Bramble's bill 7 or 8 years ago. It includes electronic mail, instant messaging, chat, text messaging, or other means of electronic messaging. So any item that is electronic messaging. The statute states that a member of a public body may transmit an electronic message to other members of the public body when the public body is not convened in an open meeting. I really don't like the way that's worded. But in a nutshell, from the point in time that the meeting begins to the point in time that the meeting ends, members of that public body cannot have electronic communications with each other. Can members of the public body have electronic communications with members of staff? And the answer is yes, they're not members of the public body. But just be aware of the public perception. If you're sending text messages to someone at home, they say, pick up some milk on the way home. The press and the public may come up and ask what you were electronic messaging about. Electronic communications in public meetings. Versus grandma. So in as much as the statute says you can send electronic messages outside of a public meeting all you like, That means that all of those communications are not subject to grandma. True or false?
I'm going out on a limb 50-50, but I have to say false.
You're
Oh.
correct. Yes, thank you. I think it's important to understand that even though the statute says you can have all the electronic communications you want outside of a public meeting, that does not provide grandma protection, that they're not subject to it. So just be aware that any communication that you have dealing with the public's business is subject to grandma. Okay, agendas very quickly. Must include reasonable specificity. In other words, other or miscellaneous really don't work very well anymore. These items were also included in Representative Donaldson's bill back 15 years ago. Each topic shall be listed under a separate agenda item. You can't take final action on any topic that is not listed on the agenda, and you can only discuss topics not listed on the agenda if it's raised by a member of the public. Just be aware of those things. We have a lot of little war stories we could cover here. Maybe I'll just touch base on one here, that you can't discuss anything that's not listed on the agenda unless it's raised by a member of the public. So a couple of ways to deal with that. One is to go out and talk to a member of the public and say, hey, John, would you please raise your hand and bring up this item so we can discuss it? And obviously that's not a good way to go because it smells really bad. And that was not the intent of this provision that was put in the statute. The intent was to make certain that there's not a wall or a barrier built between the public and their elected or appointed bodies. So if a member if an individual comes to a meeting and they raise their hand and they want to be heard, is the chair obligated to recognize that person? And the answer is no. If it's a public hearing, every member of the public has a right to be heard, right? But if it's just a regular meeting, a lot of public bodies have something on their agenda that says public comment, and they allow people to take a couple of minutes to make comment. But the board is not, the chair is not required to recognize that person. If the person raises their hand in a regular meeting, is the chair allowed to recognize them? And the answer is yes, because of this provision in the statute. And that can the chair limit the time that they comment? Sure. Or we'd like to give you a couple minutes to share with us your concern. Once that concern is shared with the board, is the board obligated to discuss it? And the answer is no, they're not obligated. Can the board at that point discuss the item? And the answer is yes. This provision in the statute allows for a discussion of the board on that item because a member of the public was recognized and brought that to their attention. And then some would ask also, can the board then take action on it? And the answer is no, unless the item happens to be specifically on the agenda. Okay, meeting notice requirements for regular meetings scheduled in advance over the course of the year. The entity needs to provide notice of the annual schedule at least once a year and specify the date, time, and place. How is notice satisfied? It's posted at the principal office, or if no principal office exists where the meeting is going to be held, posted on the public notice website, and provide notice to a local newspaper general circulation. So notice that the provision of statute says provide notice to a local newspaper. It doesn't say publish. It starts with the letter N, which means notice. It doesn't start with P, which means publish. Publish, obviously, starting with the letter P means we need to pay for it. And it's that way until May 5th. Senate Bill 201, run by Senator Maine, passed this year. You're probably familiar with that. It is a bill that is similar to bills that have been attempted over the last 15 years to eliminate the requirement of political subdivisions in the state of Utah to publish quarter-page ads in the paper. The bill may not have picked up everything, but we believe it's picked up most everything. So just be aware, as of May 5th, we're still required to provide notice to the press, which means on your public notice website, stick their email address in there so that when your clerk publishes the notice on the public notice website, it automatically emails to the press, you've provided notice. Okay, you're familiar with this. Regular meetings require 24 hours notice, and other meetings that are scheduled that are not regular also require 24 hours notice of agendas. To be in compliance, all entities must post it on the public notice website. We won't worry about this one. That doesn't apply. You have your account with the public notice website, so don't worry about that. I'm going to pass through these. I don't think we need to go through this because I just dealt with it a little bit. So I'm just going to move through that. That's just a summary of what we've dealt with, unless you have questions about it. Your budget hearings obviously need to be held after 6 p.m. or tax or fee increases, as you know. Emergency meetings may be held if the following criteria are met. It's an unforeseen circumstance. Give the best notice you can. Attempt to notify all board members. Majority must approve of the meeting, and of course, no final action can be taken at an emergency meeting. So we had a situation a number of years ago where an entity called a special meeting, an emergency meeting, to have the board sign, to authorize a bond resolution and to have the board sign it. The meeting was called on Friday. Under the emergency meeting provisions, the documents needed to be signed and submitted on Monday. Good use of the emergency meeting provisions? And the answer is, in an interactive thing, it'd be a lot easier than on Zoom, but so I'm kind of answering, my apologies. The answer is no. It is not, there would not be a good use because it is a foreseen circumstance. They had more than 24 hours to tee up a meeting. The emergency meeting provisions really apply to a situation where the board has an unforeseen circumstance. They have not previously provided powers to the executive director or manager to take action to address this issue. We've got to meet now. It's a public health and safety issue. So you tee something up in the next hour or so to deal with the issue and you can address it. Any questions on those items?
LeGrand, let me ask you this. Oh, sorry. I cut somebody off. So as we have moved into this virtual world over the past year, there has been a specific purpose for the health and safety of the board or anybody that might attend that. Do you see that if a public body, I'll just say the commission, that they find that Zoom is convenient because of work schedules or what it might be, that we can stay electronic if there's not a pending health related issue or an earthquake or whatever it might be?
Yes, and Senate Bill 125 kind of addresses that a little bit. The difference would be that you'd need to have an anchor location where the public can gather and to participate in the meeting. But so just take a look at Senate Bill 125. We talked about the provisions that don't require an anchor location a little bit, but in Senate Bill 125 on line 83, paren 4, it provides the details on how an electronic meeting can be held and the anchor location that needs to exist for the public.
Okay.
So hopefully that's helpful.
That is helpful.
Good, thank you, Mayor. Okay, closed meetings. A closed meeting, as you know, is closed to the public and the press. Again, we'd suggest you not refer to it as an executive session because of the other bill. It was run by Donaldson 10 or 15 years ago. And closed meetings may be convened only for particular purposes, and you are familiar with these items. There are 6 of them or 7. The character and competence of a healthy individual can be discussed. The deployment of security devices, personnel, or systems. Collective bargaining, if you are so fortunate to deal with unions. Pending or reasonably imminent litigation. Investigative proceedings regarding allegations of criminal misconduct. And this provision was put in the statute 4 or 5 years ago. We ran a bill because of a Supreme Court decision in the state of Utah that said that water was not property. So we had to run a bill to go back in so that you could discuss water issues in a closed meeting. And the highlighted provisions there, including any form of water right or water shares, was added to the statute. It's probably been more than 4 or 5 years ago, but that was a result of the Supreme Court decision. You can also go into closed session to discuss items that are required to be maintained private or protected by the procurement statute, including trade secrets at the time of the procurement process, or unless it's otherwise required to be permanently maintained as protected. This was put in the statute, I don't know, probably in the last 4 or 5 years. We went through a 3-year recodification with state purchasing on their procurement statute. And we were able to work with the Press Association in order to have this provision put in the closed meeting statute as an acceptable item, simply because the statute requires that certain information be maintained private and protected. And if the board can't make a decision without having that information, how in the world do you cross that line to comply with the procurement statute, but also comply with the closed meeting statute? So that is now part of the statute, kind of a newer item. If you want to make sure that that's in your policies. Okay, meeting may not be closed to interview candidates applying to fill an elected position. This is a bill run, I don't know, some 10 years or so ago by Senator Valentine. What happened was there was a city that had a vacancy in the city council. They went into closed session. They interviewed all the candidates. They actually made the decision and filled the vacancy in closed meeting. So I chatted with the senator and said, we really don't have to have this bill because what they did was illegal. And he said, well, I want to run it anyway. So now this is part of the statute. So an exception on going into closed session to discuss the character, competence, or health of an individual, that cannot be done when filling a midterm or a vacancy, whether it's midterm or otherwise, for an elected position is what the statute says, or discuss filling a midterm vacancy or a temporary absence. Okay, so you're familiar with this, how to convene a closed meeting. You can only convene from a properly noticed open meeting. We cannot vaporize into a closed meeting without having a properly noticed 24-hour agenda open meeting. Someone makes a motion, 2/3 vote required of those present, and no board action can be taken. I know this isn't, again, the best interactive, but I'll just kind of address this in the essence of time. Notice on the third bullet there, the third sub-bullet, 2/3 vote required of board members present. Okay, a couple of points there. If you have a 3-member board, obviously you need to have 2 out of 3 to vote. If you have a 5-member board, be careful. The answer is often 3 out of 5 is 2/3, but that's not correct because 3 out of 5 is only 60%. You need 66. So you need 4 out of 5 to vote in favor of that motion to get over the 66% threshold on 2/3 present. Notice the statute says board members present at the meeting. So it's not the size of the board of the council of the group, it is those who are present. So just be aware of that and the requirement for 2/3 need to vote in favor of the motion to go into closed session. So we publicly announce and record the motion, clearly state the reason for closing the meeting, record the location, and the vote of each board member going into closed session. Any questions on closed meetings? Minutes very quickly, and then we'll be done. Closed meeting minutes. No recorded minutes are required. If the meeting is closed to discuss the character, competence, or health of an individual, or the deployment of security devices, personnel, or systems. If you choose not to record the closed meeting for either of those 2 reasons, you need to have a sworn written statement that is signed by the chair and perhaps the clerk that on this date at this time, at this location, this body went into closed session for the purpose of discussing. Have both of these items on there, check one or both, sign it, put it with your regular minutes, and you're fine. So in looking at this slide, it's implicit, but the statute is explicit that minutes of closed meetings are in the form of recordings, electronic meetings or recorded minutes. All other meetings that you go into closed session for require that the board must record the closed portion of the meeting and may, notice the word may, keep detailed written minutes. So this is a contrast between closed meeting minutes and open meeting minutes. Closed meeting minutes are recorded. Open meeting minutes eventually end up with written minutes. You must convert the open meeting minutes from the recording to writing. So closed meeting minutes, they are protected records and retention is established by archives. Currently it's permanent. Closed meeting minute, let me go back to that for just a moment. Just keep in mind, and I'm sure you're aware of this, but we have had some misunderstanding over the years. We had an entity some years ago that thought, and were actually advised by their attorney, that if they converted their closed meeting minutes recordings to writing, that they could then discard the recording of the closed meeting. and that is not true. When archives became aware of it, they made it very clear that yes, you may, an entity may transcribe their closed meeting recording to writing, but they still must maintain the recording permanently. That's different than open meetings. Open meeting minutes, the recording must be transcribed into written minutes. And after a period of, I think it's currently 2 years, the entity can discard the recording. That is not the situation with closed meetings. So just a little bit of clarity there. Okay, content of minutes shall include, notice this is closed meeting, which is recording, date, time, and place of the meeting, name of those present and absent, and all others who are present. So obviously someone needs to articulate that, generally the chair. Criminal penalties, Representative Donaldson's bill, Class B misdemeanor for any member of a public body who knowingly or intentionally violates, or who knowingly or intentionally abets or advises a violation of the closed meeting provisions. So be careful. Written minutes, open meetings. So now we're shifting to open meetings, and then we'll wrap this up. Written minutes and an audio recording are required for an open meeting unless you're on a site visit or a traveling tour where no action is taken. And in that case, you can choose whatever you want to do, written or recorded. Okay, open meeting recordings, as you know, regardless of whether they're audio or video, are public records. So in recording this Zoom meeting, the recording of this would be a public record, as you're well aware. And open meeting written minutes, as you know, are public records. An audio or a video recording of an open meeting must be converted to written minutes. We talked about that a minute ago. So open meeting minutes shall include, here's the content section again, similar to closed meetings, date, time, and place of the meeting, name of board members present and absent, and the substance of all matters proposed, discussed, and decided. Doesn't need to be verbatim. A substance is sufficient. This came up during this legislative session. A representative raised her hand in a particular meeting on, I think it was House Bill 293 that was running through. And she said, we need to do something in the statute because entities are not recording what really happened at the meeting. And I had a chat with her after. I said, well, that's a good point, but just so that you're aware, it's here in the statute and it's already there. It's just that perhaps an entity is not following that guideline. Okay, electronic meetings of an open meeting shall be available to the public within 3 business days after the open meeting. That still is in place. Pending minutes, you're familiar with this, are defined in the statute as written minutes of an open meeting prepared in draft form subject to approval and shall be available within a reasonable time. Senator Henderson's bill 6 or 7 years ago. So, and the timing, the question is, what's the timing on a reasonable time? Her bill put it in statute 30 days. Pending minutes made public before approval shall be clearly labeled as unapproved so that if they're distributed, they're not confused and it doesn't result in misunderstanding. And boards are to establish procedures for approval of written minutes of each meeting. Approval of open meeting minutes are, once they're approved, meaning written minutes are the official record of action taken. In other words, the recording is not. And we went to great pains when Representative Donaldson ran his bill to make sure that it was clear that once adopted, the written minutes are the record of official action taken. That seems intuitive, but initially the bill established recordings and written minutes, which would be a disaster and a mess. So the written minutes are the official record. They are permanent records and must be properly labeled. Okay, Mayor, one more item that came up in this year, approved written minutes of open meetings. Again, House Bill 293, run by Michael Peterson, Representative Michael Peterson. This changes things a little bit for districts and interlocal agencies. It would affect you and any other if you're not already doing this. They must be posted on the public notice website or posted on the entity website with a link to the public notice website, as well as any public materials distributed at the meeting. So this is a new statute. This will be effective again on May 5th of this year. We did get a provision into the bill. We wanted to have it applied statewide, but the sponsor of the bill didn't want to do that. So this provision would apply to I may need to take a look at the bill and see for sure. It was intended to apply to anything, any entity that is affected by the bill, which would be districts, certainly, but interlocal agencies. But I have to look at the bill a bit more closely to see if it extends to interlocal agencies. The bottom line is this. We wanted to have it be easier for entities to comply with this. And a lot of entities have their own website. And on their website, they put their minutes and other materials. Well, if they do that, we didn't want to have a duplication. So the bill says if you put this information on your website as an entity, you can put a link on the public notice website. So it just ties across. Someone clicks over there, it brings them to your website. Should hopefully create a little bit of efficiency there. Open meeting recordings must be retained for 24 months after adoption of the written minutes. That may change. The original bill was 12 months. Archives changed it to 24. They've been considering 36. And again, this is open meetings, not closed meeting recordings. Closed meetings, of course, are permanent. Open meeting minutes shall include the votes of all members, individuals, the names of all citizens who appeared in the substance of their testimonies, and any other information that is required or requested by the board. And that is it. Any questions?
Yeah, I have one. As far as it pertains to the unapproved minutes, can draft, when we're waiting to approve them, can draft be written on that? Or does it have to be unimproved?
No, I would, any term you want to use that it makes it clear, draft would be perfect, and a big watermark on every
Yes.
page.
Okay.
That would be perfect. Yeah. Good question.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, one of something that kind of stuck out to me is that as far as ratifying the minutes of those unapproved minutes to make them approvable, you said that reasonable was 30 days. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator Henderson's bill said that the draft minutes need to be available within a reasonable time, and that was defined as 30 days. So you can do it sooner, obviously, if they're transcribed sooner, but that was kind of the backstop that her bill put in statute.
Okay, so that's just available, but not necessarily approved, correct?
That is correct.
All right.
Yeah, so for an entity, for example, sometimes small districts hold meetings once every quarter. But they need to have the draft minutes available within at least 30 days, even though their meeting won't be held for another 2 months to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Good question.
All right, any other questions? Well, Grant, I've been through many of these. That was probably one of the ones I enjoyed the most. I really appreciate it. Very
Oh, good.
important.
Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll now move on to item number 4 is the director's update. And so, Eric, if you just take that, we have A through G, and G has a lot of subcategories. So I'll just let you just take that section and go.
Okay. Okay, and before I start, I don't think that we got a motion or an approval on the 2 budget reports, the December or January. Did I miss that?
You know what? I'm just seeing that there was no action to be taken on them. They were just that reports.
Okay. We'll approve them next time, even though they were listed in the action item column.
You know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. Thanks for that oversight. Let's back up to 2B. If there is no other questions, would somebody like to make a motion on the monthly report budgets as Eric presented?
This is Lon Lot. I'll make a motion that we accept the budget budget report as presented.
Have a motion
Chris
by
Karn, second.
Have a second by Chris Karn. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Thanks for that oversight. I'm kind of going off what I know as a mayor, and this is a little different setup, but it works. So, okay, Eric, let's move on to item number 4.
Okay, so I'll run through these updates. The first one is Wakara Way. Lots of progress being made. The photo in the center is not the status. That's just one of the renderings.
Eric, sorry to interrupt. You switched your screen and now it's showing your presenter mode, showing both the current slide and the next slide. There you go.
This is showing presenter mode.
Now it's not. Now it's showing the full, just the presentation, the current slide you're on.
Oh, fancy that. Okay, so this year we had 4.4 million appropriated through the legislature for the Wakara Way project. We also had 4 million approved through the Mountain Land Association of Governments. That 4 million becomes available in a couple years, but effectively that funds essentially the entire project. There's about 500,000 remaining, and MAG is going to seek that funding through a UDOT fund this year. I can't remember what it's called, ITIF or something like that. And so that'll be that remaining 500,000. We were also able to put 100,000 for fencing in the Wakara Way project into this year's Watershed Restoration Initiative application. And that creates more sustainable grazing. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that application here through the presentation, but it's progressing really well. We've got that first grazing area has been fully enclosed, gates and fencing. We've got the access point for field trips that is coming along nicely. This photo up in the top corner is kind of showing that right next to the golf course, where there's a small access road and then a parking lot that will one day soon have a field trips kickoff point. So it'll be the maintenance shed for the entire Wakara Way project that'll be able to house a couple tractors and some trailers and things like that. And then it'll have a covered area for the field trips to start. So kind of a picnic pavilion type area with some restrooms. So that'll be the site where that is placed. But for now, it's just taking advantage of some fill that Orem City had and utilizing the partnership with Utah County to use some machinery to flatten that out and prepare that site. Sandy Beach is another one that we've been working on for quite a few years now. The land settlement or the boundary settlement with the neighbor to the south was finalized in December of this last year. And the funding for this project, which has been held by Forestry, Fire and State Lands for the last few years, that was set aside by the legislature, was partnered with Utah County just recently. And that will allow for this project that we're looking at, this loop, to be created, barrier rail along the side here to kind of contain traffic to where we're hoping that they are. Lots of off-road parking all the way along here, a restroom, and these little green dots will be picnic pavilions, both in the trees along the Spanish Fork River road, and then along the frontage of this Sandy Beach. In addition to that, we'll probably work with Vineyard City and get some of the sand raking accomplished down here. For the first time, we won't have to have garbage and other things, at least not at the same amount that we do now, and we'll be able to get that really cleaned up. And this should be a beautiful Sandy Beach access point on the lake. So really an exciting project, and glad to see that is moving forward. This year's Phragmites, we've reported on it just recently for what we accomplished last year, but we applied for and have a high likelihood of getting our full request. So 671,000 total, 332,000 of that is through the Watershed Restoration Initiative. And then the other partners bring that up to almost double. That'll allow for treatment of the entire shoreline of the lake with both chemical and mechanical treatments. A portion of that, a growing portion within the Wakara Way project, will be grazed moving forward, and that'll be kind of the sustainable management tool for the invasives along the shoreline. So that of the shoreline, there's 8,300 acres that are mapped as Phragmites. That is diminishing as we see success along the shoreline, but that's still kind of what we focus on for regrowth and so forth. And in addition to just the Phragmites treatments, we're also working on removing the salt cedars and Russian olive trees along the shoreline. And where we have sections that are clearing up without regrowth, we each year now we're purchasing wetland, an amount of wetland seeds and then an amount of upland seeds to plant in those areas where we're not seeing the regrowth take place. Another exciting project, as you're aware, Vineyard City is not only completing their city center here on the north end of the city, but they also have a shoreline. So this last year we were able to secure, in partnership with the city, a tourism tax advisory grant for shoreline frontage. And right now the city is just entering into a shoreline planning phase. And so the commission will be involved in that and contributing to ideas for maximizing this, it's a fairly small portion of our Utah Lake shoreline, but really maximizing the access amenities along the frontage of the city there. Another thing that the Lake Commission staff is working on is evaluating our primitive access points. There's 22 primitive access points, and we're looking at those to figure out which ones would be ideal for some improvements. We'll, over the remainder of the year, we'll work with Division of Wildlife and identify those. Right now we're focusing on Swede Lane, Mill Race, Lincoln Point, which is the county-owned portion right attached to the Lincoln Marina, and then milepost 13. Through the WRI application process, there's a Habitat Council grant that really focuses on hunter access and angling access, and these 4 sites right now. And if anyone has an interest in any of the other access points, we could look at those and figure out what would be a good enhancement. But really those dollars, the Habitat Council dollars, focus on improving those access points that would benefit those 2 uses. And so we'll develop some great ideas that will help focus on improving these access points. Sam and I went around and took a tour of these just recently, and there's great potential at these access points. And so we're looking forward to seeing some cool improvements there. This year's legislative session was a really big win, to say the least, for Utah Lake. Overall, the legislature provided $9.8 million in one-time funding for Utah Lake. That includes $1 million for algae remediation, Wacara Way, $4.4 million. A portion of that is for fencing. A portion of that is for that maintenance facility that we talked about that we're preparing the site for. And then 3.3 million of that is for trail. So the total for trail right now is 7.3 million. And what we're intending to use that for is to tie Vineyard City along the shoreline up to the University Parkway West, kind of the west terminal of that road, where it ties into the Orem Frontrunner Station and the tail end of University Parkway itself. And then from there, head south along the kind of inner portion of the project. And after we pass by Johnson Pond, it'll veer back out to the shoreline and head south until it connects with the north boundary of the Provo River Delta project, so right down in Provo. So really exciting that is all funded now, and we're working with Mountain Land Association of Governments, and likely Utah County will be the manager of the trail portion of that project. Also Shoreline Restoration work, we were granted 800,000 for that. Marina Upgrades, 2.6 million. So we'll be forming kind of a subcommittee to look at the marinas that we have and what projects we could look to implementation on. Right now we have tourism grants on that have yet to be completed and still need match dollars on Saratoga Springs, their marina, as well as American Fork Boat Harbor and the Vineyard City Center beach frontage. And so we'll be looking at those and potentially the state park. The state park as a division was granted a much larger appropriation for upgrades. And so we're trying to figure out if a portion of that will be going directly to the Utah Lake State Park or not, and see what is needed. I know that there's a master plan for that park, and so it'll be exciting to see some of these marinas really see some big improvements. And lastly, invasive species remediation, 1 million, and some of that will be for animal feeding operation, and likely that'll go towards kind of in developing this a tool for implementing grazing management at that Wacara Way project, but could be implementing that elsewhere around the lake as well. Okay. And then Mayor, if it's all right, should we just jump into the budget discussion?
Yeah, let's maybe just pause there and see if there's any questions. Okay, all right, yeah, let's move on to item number 5, discussion on and an action on the tentative budget.
Okay, so for the fiscal year 22, this is our tentative budget. So what we're looking for is the right column here. So we're planning to put $10,000 into the capital projects fund. We're budgeting for $10,000 in equipment purchases for this upcoming year, $30,000 in access enhancements. We see lots of work happening on our access points, and we would love to be able to have matching dollars available for any of these Habitat Council grants that we apply for. And that's all for capital projects. For general fund, overall, we're looking at about just under a 5% increase this year. A small bump on wages, taxes and benefits is the one that is hard to not have to adjust for. We're adding a little bit here for our cell phone. Insurance is 5.6% increase. And then we're also putting a little bit more into invasive species control. Again, this is something that we partner with Utah County on, and it is easy to direct dollars at specific projects when we have a little extra to add to that pot to get work done around our marinas and so forth that requires a little of extra work. So that's the changes that were relevant for this year on our general fund. As far as membership contributions, again, as in comparison with our general fund request, it's just under a 5% increase for municipalities and all members. The difference from this year to last year, it went up from a total budget of 305 last year to 320 this year. And then just, I thought I'd point out as a return on investment, last year, 305,000 total budget. That allowed for the Lake Commission to find and get contracted 5.2 million in Tourism Tax Advisory Board Council or Advisory Board contracts, received 9.8 million in state legislative appropriations, 458,000 in shoreline restoration work, for a total of 15,458,000. So just over a 50 times return on our annual investment. So I wanted to point out that while the Lake Commission is a small entity, it is making a big difference on Utah Lake, and we really are looking in every corner that we can to maximize on getting dollars into the lake and see big improvements. So I'll leave it at that.
All right. Is there any questions on the tentative budget? Okay. Seeing no questions, I would entertain a motion to adopt or approve the tentative budget with the idea that our next commission meeting, we will come back with the final budget. This is subject to change, but this is a really good outline. I think it's a well prepared. Thanks, Eric. So if there's no questions, is there a motion to approve the tentative budget?
As an error, I'll motion to approve the tentative budget for FY 2022.
Okay. I have a motion by Ezra Nair,
This is Lon Lot, I'll second.
I have a motion or second by Lon Lot. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Anybody that would like to abstain? Okay, thank you. We'll now move on to item number 6, the Utah Lake Authority Bill. Eric, why don't you just kind of give us a little play down how this, maybe where it started, where it ended, and where you see it now.
Yeah, so Utah Lake Authority bill, it was sent to interim, so it did not pass this year's legislative session. It went through lots of iterations right up until about 2 weeks before the end of the session, when one of the standing committees sent it to interim. They are going to be working on that. There's a number of different committees that are reviewing it. As legislative or as elected officials, I am told by Representative Brammer that he will be working through the Utah County Organization of Governments to iron out any last issues that our local municipal elected officials might have with that. And then they're also working through with the water community as well, which was really the bulk of those that had any opposition to the bill by its last iteration were kind of, I would say, centered around the water community. And so they'll be working closely with the water community throughout the year, it sounds like. And we'll try to keep a pulse on that and report back at our meetings with any updates that take place on that.
You know, I would just add, that was our last commission meeting that we had the report on this, and I was concerned that it was being rushed. It was very complex bill in that first draft form. It was something that we were not comfortable with as a city, and as the chair, I was not comfortable with that. I appreciated how it progressed along through the process, and Senator Brammer's willingness to work. It didn't get there. I was just very concerned that that there was a lot in it, that it would have dissolved this commission. I felt like this commission had a lot of good momentum, and personally, as just a matter of statement, I think that the commission does, and it has good standing and good record in being able to be good stewards of the lake. And we have state agencies that are right in the middle of the commission as well. that are able to receive appropriated funds, and then allow us to work with them in the best places that are possible. So we'll see where this Lake Authority bill goes. I think by virtue of that presentation we just had and how we work together, with contributions being a part of a commission and how we maximize the dollars and the grant processes that we do, I think that's a real feather in the commission's cap, and I'll give a lot of that credit to our executive director. And that really, it seems like we're just always just looking for dollars and ways to maximize what we have, very frugal in the way that we do it. So any other comments on this process, or maybe even direction moving forward on the Lake Authority bill?
This is Carrie Malkovich, Woodland Hills. I just wanted to say again, echo your comments about our executive director, Eric. I think he did a great job, and I also appreciate all of you who came to the table, and Representative Bramer for listening and making the changes that he did. And I hope that we can continue during interim.
Okay.
Mayor, this is Chris Karn, Saratoga Springs. Just want to kind of publicly thank all of the staff that supports many of the people on this call from our various municipalities who worked really hard. I know our staff in Saratoga Springs was very involved. Our city manager helping give edits and feedback, and I think it was really instrumental in getting the bill to a point where, I guess we could have lived with it. I'm not sad that it died in committee, but I know we had a lot of people work a lot of extra time and put a lot of effort into it. And I just, want to recognize those people.
Thank you, Council Member. All right. Any other comments? Okay. We'll move on to item number 7. There's a JSRIP update by Russ Franklin. Go ahead and take the floor, Russ.
All right, thank you. I'm going to try to share my screen. See if you guys can you guys see my PowerPoint now?
1 second. Yes, it's pulling up anyway.
All right, so, all right, just to give you, go for it.
Now it went, Russ. Sorry, it was delaying. You're good now.
Okay, perfect. And let's see if it'll let me go to the slides. All right, just to give you guys an update on the June sucker. First time presenting to you all. Thank you for the time. And, I get the privilege of actually bringing you really good news, not by any of my work, but by the work of everybody who's come before, especially everybody on the JSRIP and all the partners of the group. On February 3rd, it was official. The June sucker was downlisted from endangered to threatened. Huge news. This is the fifth fish species that's ever had that since 1973. So it's a miracle that it's happened, and it's all due to hard work from everybody on every partner, part of the group. Basically, what does this actually mean? What does downlisting mean? We talk about it. We're going to be talking about it for quite a while. Basically, we've pushed back the clock on extinction. We had a species that was going to be extinct if we didn't step in. I think in 1997, they had only 300 individuals estimated at the spawning run in that year. So, we went from 300 individuals to now I think we're over tens of thousands on some of the spawning runs, depending upon the year. So it's a miracle. It's no small feat. You guys are probably aware of the history of the June sucker. In the interest of time, I'm going to skip over some of the past history of it, just to highlight, note that it was endangered in 1986, listed as endangered in 1986. And the JSRIP was formed by all these different agencies and special interest groups. You guys are well aware of who they are. And it did have 2 goals. Not only to recover the June sucker so that it no longer requires protection under the Endangered Species Act, but also to allow continued operation of existing water facilities and future development of water resources for human use in Utah Lake Drainage Basin. And I'm happy to announce that it still has done that. It has accomplished part of the first goal and part of the second goal. When it was listed, the June Sucker program decided to do an ecosystem approach on the recovery. They didn't just want to focus on one area. They decided that they were going to focus on multiple areas to give it a better chance on recovery. Here we have a few pictures, public outreach, we have monitoring, we have stalking, June suckers, we have habitat restoration. Probably the most well-known activity has been the carp removal on Utah Lake. Utah Lake, since 2010, we've removed over 30 million pounds of carp, reduced the carp biomass by 75%, increased the submerged aquatic vegetation. And our future plans, we are going to be targeting not only the large carp, but we have changed and we are going to be targeting more juvenile carp to try to keep the population size and the biomass in the lake low at where the levels are target levels on the carp. We are also researching other control strategies. There's a lot out there. Common carp are an invasive species all over the world. There's a lot of research and a lot of money being put into them. And so we're just trying to keep an open mind to see what else we could do to help eliminate or reduce carp in Utah Lake. Right now, what we have coming up, we also do have the northern pike that are found in Utah Lake and other invasive species. We did have an RFP out that was closed this last Monday. We will be doing a telemetry study, and we will be working forward on how to mitigate and minimize any impacts from the northern pike on the June sucker. Just to give you guys a heads up on that. Also, big news, you guys already know about the Provo River Delta restoration. It started last year. I've got you guys, I don't know if you can see this picture on the right, just the project overview, but this really is going to be the linchpin on getting to the delisting of the June sucker. We've had good results at the Hobble Creek restoration, and now we're going to be working on the Provo River Delta restoration. It is going to take about 4 years. Good news is we are ahead of schedule. This is as of, I think this picture was last week or the week before. I think it was on the 12th. This is the latest update. Everything in dark blue is the excavation from 2020. And now the light blue is everything that has been done since the first of the year. We've got 10,198 feet of channel that's been excavated. And the gray areas, I don't know if you can see the transparent gray areas on my screen to your screen, but you can show what is left to be done. And it's pretty impressive. Yes, not having good weather for a water year is very bad, but on the flip side, it's very good for construction. And so they've been able to get ahead of schedule with the construction and the excavation. I wish we had more water, but there is a silver lining to not having the water, at least on the aspect of they are ahead of schedule. So we'll see where we're going to be. And if it holds true, I don't know, that it looks like we might have some more storms these next few weeks. One thing of note, there is the trailhead closure for the Skipper Bake Dike Trail. Just safety concerns. They do have this posted on the Provo River Delta website. The new trail probably won't be open until 2024. It just, on that dike, it was just a safety issue. They did post notices, so the public is aware of that. But that did close this last 1 or 2 weeks ago. So also, that's all I have. Any questions? All right, if not, thank you.
Thank you, Russ.
Yep.
Very encouraging. Appreciate it.
Could we request that you send this presentation? There's been some requests sent over to me already, so.
Yeah, of course. By all means, I'll send it over to you after this meeting.
Thanks, Russ.
Yep, you're welcome.
All right, we'll now move on to item number 8. Erica Gaddis and Scott Daly, sorry if I mispronounced that.
Daily.
Daly, okay. We're going to discuss Utah Lake water quality study and the status. So, Erica.
Morning, everybody. You see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Well, I'll just give a quick update on our study. Again, this is a study that is a long time coming and will take a good number of years to complete. We're about halfway through. So just as a quick reminder, this is our water quality study, primary intent to identify numeric nutrient criteria to help control harmful algal blooms in Utah Lake. We started in 2015 with data gathering and characterization of the water quality data. We've moved into phase 2, criteria development. We're a little bit behind. We had hoped to have that completed this year. We think that phase 2 will extend into 2022 at this stage. And then if you recall, last time we talked about management goals and scenario modeling and costs of implementation. So we've started that work late last year and will be working with many of you and our steering committee over the next couple of years on the phase 3 implementation planning. Ultimately, the criteria and implementation plan we hope to be completed by the 2023-24 timeframe. And we've made a commitment that we wouldn't implement any new regulations into anyone's permit before 2030. So that's the overall schedule, just as a reminder. A couple updates. We've hired a new facilitator for our study. As you know, we have a 16-member steering committee, a 10-member science panel, a lot of opinion and a lot of very active participation and a lot of work to do. And so we've really benefited by having a study facilitator. Previously, we had Resolve and SWCA. We've transitioned to Peak Facilitation Group, and Heather Bergman, Samuel Wallace, shown here, have just finished their first meeting with our science panel, and we think it went quite well. So as a quick reminder, again, the way that this study will be conducted is being conducted. We have the steering committee there at the center. That's a 16-member interest-based stakeholder group. They sat a 10-member science panel that is discipline-based to make sure we have all the right scientists or scientific disciplines represented. All of the work products will be passed through the Utah Lake Commission. The most recent example of that was the management goals table that was developed in collaboration between the steering committee and science panel. Ultimately, any recommendations for nutrient criteria or other implementation measures will pass through the commission before going through the Division of Water Quality and on to the Water Quality Board, and then ultimately to US EPA for approval, and if there is a significant cost, to the Utah legislature for approval as well. So the original charge from the steering committee to the science panel, there were 4 questions that the steering committee charged the science panel with. The first was basically, what was the historical condition of Utah Lake? The second was, what is the current state? The third was, what extra information is needed in order to develop and define nutrient criteria to support our beneficial uses for recreation, aquatic life, and agriculture? And then kind of a follow-up question to that is there an improved stable state that could be reached under the constraints of current water and fish management? So a couple quick updates. Our steering committee meets again next Thursday. We spent a lot of time last year preparing that management goals document. We're excited now to begin the scenario development process this year. You're all welcome always to attend these meetings. They can get quite in-depth and really interesting. The steering committee is awaiting review of the initial findings to those 4 questions that I outlined from the science panel, hopefully later this spring or early summer. And just as a reminder, the water quality management goals that we put together that you all reviewed and approved at your last meeting are basically statements about the desired water quality condition for the beneficial uses in Utah Lake. We'll be moving with the steering committee, and I think this is where it'd be great to have more active participation from the commission into an evaluation of implementation measures. So we will have a number of different scenarios that outline the time it will take to recover the lake to meet various Utah Lake water quality goals. And each of those nutrient scenarios reductions will have a cost associated with them. There will be other implementation measures that we'll want to evaluate, including some of the treatment concepts that have been discussed recently and other in-lake Utah Lake management changes. Quick update on the science panel. Here's our list of scientists here on the left. 10 members. We have 4 out-of-state scientists and 6 from Utah. They've been working diligently to complete some of the initial studies as part of this strategic research plan that we hope to have finalized enough that we can report back out to the steering committee and then to you on some of our initial findings. As you know, the science is complicated, but just to give you a sense of some of the studies that the science panel has identified to fill some of the key gaps in our understanding of Utah Lake, we have a bioassay study, sediment studies. We're working on an RFP for watershed modeling to understand the loading of nutrients into the lake, and a phosphorus binding study. So just real quick update. We heard an update at our science panel meeting on Monday from many of these researchers. The bioassay study being conducted by Dr. Zach Anderud at Brigham Young University. Basically, this is a microcosm study, if you will, where they take in these cubitaners on the right, Utah Lake water and change the nutrient concentrations, either increase nitrogen or phosphorus or reduce it in various ratios and combinations to see what the impact is on reducing or increasing various types of phytoplankton, including the cyanobacteria that we worry about with respect to toxins. So that work is nearly complete. The science panel is doing its final review and ultimately will help us understand the extent to which nitrogen or phosphorus or both are controlling harmful algal blooms in Utah Lake, and will start to give us a sense of to what extent reductions would be helpful or to what extent increases could be harmful. The next is a paleolimnology study. This about halfway through this is being led by Dr. Janice Brainy up at Utah State University. Dr. Brainy has been slowed down a little bit because many of the labs that she was relying on closed down during the pandemic. So they're just reopening now and she's just getting her samples analyzed. Essentially, this study took cores, which you can see here, at various locations around the lake to look at what the ecology, the nutrient regime, the sediment may have looked like historically. And this goes back to pre-settlement times. You can actually see some of the changes, like for example, in Provo Bay, there's a pretty dramatic change at some point along the way. They're using various methods to date these cores. So every single slice of core will have a year associated with it. And then from that, they'll be able to tell us to what extent algal blooms have been the dominant mechanism of productivity in the lake, and to what extent there were plants previously. Some of her early results indicate that at least around the shorelines in Utah Lake, there certainly were more macrophytes and kind of different ecology historically. So watch for that. This is a really exciting study. The science panel was pretty lit up by these initial results, and we're excited to see the final study. Dr. Soren Brothers at Utah State University is conducting a littoral sediment study. This question gets even more at that question of to what extent the lake would have previously been more dominated by macrophytes or plants versus algae, and how that productivity has changed over time. You can see the location of his cores. These are largely on the shorelines of Utah Lake, and we expect that work to wrap up this summer and tie in nicely with the next project that we've just finished contracting and will begin soon. That's a phosphorus binding study being led by Dr. Josh Lamont from Brigham Young University. And this will really help inform the extent to which particular types of chemicals such as calcite bind with phosphorus and to what extent that affects the phosphorus cycle. This work will really inform, once we identify a nutrient reduction target, Understanding the cycle between sediments and the lake water column will help us predict, for example, how long it might take for the lake to recover or change if we were to make a change with respect to watershed inputs. And then finally, we're aware that there's another study that Timpanogos Special Services District is doing, lake mesocosms. This is work that's being funded through the legislature and coming through Forestry, Fire, and State Lands. They've identified a research team at Brigham Young University, Utah Valley University, and Oreo Helix. And this work kind of takes those microcosms that I showed earlier that were in those cubitaners that were pretty small, kind of milk jug studies, expand that to kind of 10-meter, we call them limnocorals or mesocosms. So this will allow the researchers to test out various nutrient changes in nutrient regime, perhaps some treatment concepts, exclusion of carp, all of these sorts of combinations in terms of lake management will be tested in these lake mesocosms. And that work will be getting going this summer as well. Finally, the science panel has gone through and reviewed the original ranking of kind of data gaps from that graphic that I showed earlier. We've filled, we think, most of those gaps with the studies that we've commissioned. There's a few left on the list, and science panel is currently reviewing whether that limnocoral study or some additional work on the littoral sediments or that phosphorus binding sediment study can fill these final gaps. We're hoping to have the field work, I'm hoping to have the field work completed in 2021 this year so that we can move towards taking all those really cool pieces of knowledge and stitching them together into a clear picture of how the lake works and how we might restore it to perhaps an improved state. So again, just the schedule, we're about, I'd say halfway through, maybe a little more if you count our phase 1 work, but we're hoping to have some really good results to share with you in 2022, and we'll definitely be looking for your input on the implementation planning phase in 2021 and 2. So that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I should probably ask Scott if I missed anything, or Eric.
Erica, this is Scott. I think you covered it well. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott.
I have a question, Erica. Did they really find a Rubik's Cube way back in the bottom of the core sample? It looked like there was, at the maybe that was a comparison of just the core. I mean, that looked like,
yeah,
what's that, 19?
It does look like a Rubik's Cube, doesn't it? I honestly don't know, Scott, if you know what that is. I don't know.
I don't. It looks like part of their key for being able to identify the layers, but I can't really make it out on this picture.
I figured as such. It's just a way to keep us awake.
That's right. That's the goal.
All right.
Any other questions? Thank you.
I'm noticing down on the chat that the limnocoral study will take several more years. Anybody want to, David, you want to elaborate on that?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm David Richards with Oreo Helix Ecological. We're doing the Timpanogos limnocoral study. This first year is just a proof of concept. So we only have 6 limnocorals. We're doing different treatments, but in the next few years, we're going to increase the number of corrals to hopefully 16, and then we'll be able to get much more information. So it'll be an ongoing project. We'll have some good results this year, but we won't have any replicates, so we won't be able to do much statistical comparisons between them. And everybody likes statistics to help verify what we're finding. I also might add on those cores, if you notice those cores, there's a big layer where there used to be lots of native mollusks, snails, clams, and mussels that disappeared. And we're hypothesizing that those mussels and clams and snails had a lot to do with maintaining water quality.
Okay. All right. Thank you, David. Hey, any other questions? Okay. We'll move on to item number 9. Commission staff report, and Sam will let you take this.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mayor. Let me just share my screen with you. So my bar is blocking my tabs. You can see I was looking at the Provo Delta website. First time I wanted to report on as far as communications go is that hopefully next week you should all be receiving this pocket guide in the mail, which is a pamphlet that our staff put together to help all the governing board members have easy access to relevant information to help you in your representation on the governing board. So in this, it explains the background of the commission, who our current chairs are. It lists out some of the featured current lake projects like the Provo River Delta Restoration Project, the Wakara Way. It explains some details about timeline, the details of those projects. There's also some information about the trainings that we did this morning that will need to occur on a regular basis. And if you have a desire for more information, there's links available for each of them. There's also the annual meeting schedule for the governing board, as well as the technical committee, so that all the governing board representatives have access to that. And then it also lists out some of the current goals of the Utah Lake Commission staff. And so these all fall within the realm of the main objectives of the lake. There are 5 of them to sum up to basically protect, enhance the lake for the future, as well as current generations. So there are 12 goals listed on there that kind of explain where the staff are working right now in the current year, and this will be updated on an annual basis and sent out to the board. And then it also lists the directory of the board as well, so that everyone has access to that full list of who is representing right now and their contact information. And then on the back, it has the ways that you can also stay in tune on a more regular basis, whether that's following your favorite of our social media channels. By all means, you do not have to follow all 4. You might see some duplication there across them, but some great information. Our meeting minutes are always posted on our YouTube channel, as well as a lot of other great videos. And then Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter we utilize on a regular basis for lots of great information about the lake, the projects that are going on, the events, and other cool things. You also can choose to subscribe to the monthly newsletter. I believe if anybody's been on the board for a year or 2, that all those are on there. And then we also have the Utah Lake podcast, which I wanted to show you all. If you just go to utahlakecommission.org/podcast, it will take you to this website, which is where we host the Utah Lake podcast, which is through a service called Anchor. But a lot of really great episodes. We've gotten a lot of really positive feedback in regards to the content that's shared on there. We actually just posted our most recent episode this morning about fishing for walleye. So if any of you happen to be anglers, there's some great info there with a fisherman who's been at Utah Lake for over 60 years. So a lot of experience fishing there. But we also did recent episodes on the projects that are going to be happening this year and some of those developments, some of the events that are going to be happening at the lake this year, and then a variety of other topics that focus around that name of facts, fiction, and fun, which is talking about the projects at the lake and the history, trying to clear up fiction at the lake, like myths or rumors that have been heard, and talking about some of the recreation that goes on there as well. And then last but not least, last thing to share on is just we are making progress on the life jacket loaner program, which is something we've talked about the board before in the past, where we did a drive last year in September to collect lightly used life jackets. We continue to work with the families and a few other partners to try and implement this at a handful of access points here in the next month or so, hopefully. Most recent development is we did partner with Wilkinson Trophy in Provo, and they've agreed to sponsor the cost of doing the plaques that are going to be on each of these stations that are kind of a commemorative plaque for the 2 friends, Priscilla Biankowski and Sofia Hernandez, who lost their lives, unfortunately, last year. Their families have been a great partner in trying to turn this in a direction of a kind of a legacy project, a way to try and help others, and a way for them to be able to give back to the community. So we're really appreciative of Wilkinson being willing to help and donating that. Right now, we are in the process of finalizing the designs on the stations, and then we'll be working to secure, hopefully, sponsorship from a construction supplies company of some sort or another here to try and help with the materials that are needed in order to construct those stations. And then we're also working right now on agreements with the various marinas and access points and their management entities in order to allow for the program to operate at those locations. So a lot of great work's happening. Be excited at the June meeting and even the September meeting to report back on some of those efforts.
Sam, this is Terry Malkovich. Do you still want us to advertise in our cities about the need for life jackets, or is that campaign, part of the campaign, finished?
Great question. Thank you so much, Councilman Malkovich. I appreciate it. We did do kind of a one-time drive in September that was for the physical life jackets. However, we've kept the online donation link available on our website. I don't think we've seen any donations come in. However, as the stations go up, the plan has been to make another push and do more collection again and raise awareness. So likely you'll see more information from our staff about that in the near future.
We did get donations. We just haven't seen any in a while, right, Sam?
Yes, no, my apologies. So we received, I think it was about 100 life jackets were donated and about $1,700 were donated online when we made that push back in September, just after Labor Day. We haven't seen anything, I think, since that time period. Maybe I think one person brought in a few more life jackets once, but we've kind of let that sit over the winter and felt that it would be a good public relations approach once we have the stations being constructed or a date set to then make a second push to try and receive additional donations and obviously work with partners moving forward as the program starts running. Any other questions from the board?
You know, just comment, you know, in American Fork, we'll be signing an MOU with the commission. And I think that when we have these bins in the harbors, they'll be easy to be able to, people as they're cleaning out their boats and they might see some excess, they'll be able to just donate there and make it very accessible. I think it's going to be a real win for this program.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, thank you so much.
Any other questions? Okay, item number 10 is just a review of the upcoming minutes that the meetings that we have. June 17th, and in that meeting, we will have a public hearing and we will adopt our final budget. September 16th, 2021 and December 9th, 2021. If any other meetings are needed, we will go through a process before then and get them scheduled. Item number 11, general comments for the public. Is there anybody that would like to make comment?
You guys are doing a great job.
Thanks, David. I'll ask Sam and Eric, have we received anything by way of online that is worthy of deeming it public comment?
I don't think so. Could I add one quick thing though?
You bet.
I wanted to mention that last year I had promised that we were going to review our municipal contribution schedule based on the census. The census deadline was December of 2020. They now say that they are hoping to have it produced by April of 2021. As a result of that, rather than scramble the budget, you know, in our next iteration, it will be pushed off until next year, but it'll give us lots of time to present that, you know, kind of what that new calculation might be, probably at our one of our early meetings, even maybe at our next meeting, but not in an effort to change the 2022 budget, but rather for the subsequent one, just as an update.
Okay. All right, we'll close the public comment period. I would just note that our next meeting on the 17th, we will be having it going back to our normal circumstances. We're planning on that to be held at the Utah County Health and Justice Building, room 2500. Virtual services will be offered depending on the COVID conditions of the time. So,
are we considering doing hybrid meetings going forward? It's been great to see the turnout with the online meetings, and I think some people have additional meetings to go to right away, and I would like us to consider hybrid meetings, although we would most likely like to come in person, but to give that option whether we have COVID restrictions or not.
I think that's it's a really good discussion. I don't think we would vary from this agenda if we wanted to kind of set that as a standard procedure. I completely agree with you that a 7:30 meeting sometimes, and we're pulling people from Salt Lake and other regions to come down, that maybe a new normal with this is that we have a combination of that. But perhaps that was the question I was trying to get an answer to, that even though there is not a pandemic, that this is maybe a new operating procedure by way of just getting the quorum together in an easier fashion and saving travel time. And so, is there anybody that would like to think that we could just have a hybrid moving forward?
That is my vote.
Okay. We won't take action. We'll kind of take direction based upon comment.
Mayor Frost, I would also support that as well too.
Okay.
This is Councilman Lamson. I would be in favor of the hybrid meeting opportunity as well.
Okay. Well, I know with having hybrid, it presents a new challenge with technology, but we've seen it done in other places. And so we will have that posted on the next agenda. There might need to be somebody figure, Sam can figure this out, how to do a good hybrid.
We've already done it before, so I think we're well equipped for it.
Yeah.
We'll just keep it as an option at future meetings.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion that we adjourn. Long lot.
Motion by Lon Lot to adjourn. Second.
Terry Malkovich.
Have a second. All in favor.